And welcome to Juck'S Bucks. Appreciate you so much for joining me on a Tuesday morning. As today we are heading down to see Coach Day talk for the first time since the big win in Michigan. And we will get exactly 30 minutes to hear from Coach Day about the game that we just saw and the game that we are getting ready for as the Buckeyes. Just 1 week of prep between that explosion in Ann Arbor, that explosion of emotion, what was surely a draining win and difficult to recover from. And now they immediately have to turn around and play another game with huge stakes. And I was talking about this last night. We can kind of compare it to the playoffs last year where you're playing huge game after huge game after huge game. And you got to experience the joy and the emotion that comes with it. And then immediately start prepping. But remember last year between those playoff games, you had 10 days. Those 10 days, that extra couple of days makes a huge difference. This year, you get the win against Michigan, which hilariously some people tried to push last year, means about as much as a Bills-Chiefs game in week 3. We have seen Michigan wins that have sent Ohio State to the national championship game, and I don't even know if those wins looked more emotionally charged afterwards than what we saw on Saturday from both sides. And they had already locked themselves into the playoffs. The Buckeyes were going to the playoffs no matter what. So the next time somebody tries to tell me this kind of nonsense, that game has less meaning, I'll simply play them a clip of the end of that game. But these guys got to get ready to go immediately. So they're back at practice yesterday. They're at practice today. And the game plan's getting installed. It's go time already. While we're still thinking about this game that just happened, they're moving on. And I don't think that we could have a better bunch more suited to get through this kind of stuff than what we got, particularly on this Ohio State defense. This Buckeye defense, led by Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles, two guys who are 25 years old physically and 32 years old upstairs. I mean, they're just such great leaders that if you can't trust these guys and Kenyatta and Caden Curry, guys like this to be able to get it together, that game happened. We can enjoy that after the playoffs and for the rest of our lives. But this one we need right now. I love their chances this week. And of course, we'll talk a ton about the Indiana game. But we're not going to do that today because today is about recruiting, as tomorrow, unbelievably, starts the early signing period that will go through December 5th. So the 3rd through the 5th. And we're going to find out just who is locked in, who's ready to go immediately tomorrow morning. We're going to start seeing them roll in. Now, we've already seen schools come in with big offers trying to sway some of our guys away. And we're going to see more of that. And Ohio State and all the schools know that. So what they do is they give all the guys, they send them a little graphic that says, it's got their picture on it. Like, I'm locked in and I'm signing on Wednesday. And you get to kind of roll back and see, okay, which one of these guys are going to tweet this thing? Which guys are going to tweet, no need to worry about me? And we've seen quite a few of them tweet that. In fact, I've compiled a little list of the guys who have tweeted that and already let us know they're going to be signing on Wednesday. Emmanuel Ruffin, Brock Boyd, never a doubt. Braxton Rembert. Oh, remember the other day I was saying I wanted to dig in to find out how Ohio State found Braxton Rembert. That is the 6'5", 200-pound linebacker out of Georgia who was pretty much unranked, committed to Wake Forest. That was his only P5 offer. And he heard that show and reached out to me and explained the story that he was basically getting, I don't want to say teased, but he was like, people around his circle were basically saying, you don't deserve that offer from Wake Forest, because it was the only P5 offer. And he was really upset by it. And he wanted to get more attention to show them that, yes, I deserve this offer from Wake Forest and then some. So he spent 3 hours one night sending out his film everywhere he could find to send it out, every 247 rivals, everything. And he heard back from some people, didn't hear back from others. One person he heard back from, Josh Chorb at Ohio State. And this kid hustled to get himself noticed, got himself noticed by Ohio State. How about that? He did it himself. The story gets even better with that one, right? Who else we got? Max Riley. Max Riley, of course, Mason Wilhelm, Favor Aki, Dre Quinn, Simeon Caldwell, Sam Greer, Tucker Smith, Jameer Perez, Kamari Bing, newly minted 4-star, CJ Sana, Darius McKinley. Now that's an interesting one. Lane Kiffin obviously just gets the LSU job. And there was some thought potentially that big brother Dominic McKinley, if he was really happy with the hire that LSU made, and there was some excitement that we might see Darius rescind his commitment to Ohio State and go join LSU. This is a good sign that Darius is blocked in at Ohio State, and it's a good sign that's potentially moving forward. There's still an opportunity to sway Dominic as well. Obviously, that Lane Kiffin hire, people automatically concerned about Blaine Bradford with the buzz about him and how Lane Kiffin is going to affect that Louisiana kid whose brother's still on that team. I don't have any fear. Like, anything is an upgrade from Brian Kelly. So it was always going to be an upgrade. And I know a lot of people are sweating this one out, but I feel deeply that Blaine Bradford is locked into Ohio State. I don't think anything's changed in that. I've maintained that the entire time. Blaine's not given us any reason to think that at all, ever, not once. So, I'm taking him for his word on this one, which, is sometimes the famous last words, but I think Blaine is in. He hasn't tweeted his little logo yet or his little graphic, but I think we're good to go. Now, some guys that we have been talking about recently, of course, there are always going to be the Heartline wide receiver, desperation plays, and clickbait articles, and sometimes they're accurate and sometimes they're not. And we got to decipher what has substance to it and what doesn't. So we work really hard to try to find that information here on the Juck on Bucks staff. That's just me. Maybe someday we'll have a staff. But last night, the job opened at Kentucky. Stoops got fired, and it wasn't long before I got a text asking if this was the one we needed to worry about regarding Brian Hartline. And thank goodness this opening was public for just 2 hours before Will Stein got the job. Will Stein out of Oregon. They were apparently looking at Hart and Will Stein. And Brian Hartline will not be going to Kentucky. Now, I fully believe Brian Hartline would have taken that job. They care about football. They pay huge money. And he would have the opportunity to coach and work at his brother Mike's alma mater. Mike was a stud down there. People say, why would he go to Kentucky? And just have a hard time wrapping their mind around how an Ohio State guy would go to Kentucky. And those are the same people who probably sat here and said Penn State would never hire him. He's never been a head coach. Well, that's why you go to Kentucky. It's a stepping stone. He wants to be a head coach. He can't do that now at Ohio State. At some point, he's going to get an opportunity either for a really good job or he's going to have to take a stepping stone job. So when that Penn State job opens up next time, or a job of that caliber, nobody can say that about him anymore. And at Kentucky, they're giving you lots of resources to work with. They're investing in their program. They pay their head coach and their support staff a lot of money. And you don't need to go win 9 games at Kentucky. You need to have some big wins and be relatively consistent. Pull off some big wins and be relatively consistent. They're not looking for you to win the SEC. So, yeah, I think he'd have taken that job. But instead of that happening, we get great news as it's a shot at Oregon losing their excellent offensive coordinator. Will Stein's fantastic. So now Dan Lanning, who went from Kenny Dillingham, stud, to Will Stein, stud. We'll see if he can follow that up 3 times in a row. The odds are low, but he's been pretty aces with his hires. At any rate, not going to help him for this particular class here as you're trying to close down a class and all the offensive players just found out that your offensive whiz, Will Stein, is leaving. Now, let's talk about Hartline's commits in the class. West Virginia. West Virginia beat Ohio State out for Kevin Brown, the 5-star offensive lineman out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And his dad played for Rich Rod at West Virginia. West Virginia been really feeling themselves since they beat Ohio State out for Brown. And his dad also played with Chris Henry Sr. And Pac-Man also played with them too for Rich Rod. So you got this whole kind of circle here going around that leads to Chris Henry Jr. and West Virginia has been in communication with him, got offers out to him. The West Virginia folks were going nuts. They think they're getting Chris Henry Jr. They think they're flipping him. I don't think that's happening. I would be pretty stunned if that did happen, but it's Oregon who we got to worry about with here at the 11th hour. Oregon has always been offering him a ridiculous amount of money. I don't know if that's been upped recently, but it's, it's a ton of money. But we have to remember with Chris Henry Jr., we're talking about a kid who's making his own money. This is a guy with endorsement deals with Adidas already, and a big endorsement with Adidas, not just some, one-off. Like Caden Dixon-Wyatt, he's got a one-off deal with Adidas. A little small deal. Chris Henry Jr. has a legit deal with Adidas, and he is making his own money. He's getting paid from Ohio State. If he comes to Ohio State, he's getting paid from anywhere he goes. Oregon's just going to be more. And they set it up with their Division Street. That's the name of their collective, where it's got some kind of a Nike incentives. I don't fully understand how it works, but it's incentivized through Nike in a way that makes it really enticing to these kids. But as we know, Chris Henry Jr. has just said with Adidas, I don't know if that throws a wrench into things, but I hope so. Regardless, Chris Henry Jr. wants to be the best. He wants to be the best. Matter of fact, he just said it recently. Here's Chris not too long ago.
Me, personally, I feel like, if I just keep working, I feel like it's going to sound cocky, but I want to be the best ever.
Going to sound cocky, but I want to be the best ever. That's self-awareness and, really high goals. He should have those. I like it. So, Chris, look, some people are going to be stressed out until his name's on the dotted line. I like Chris for the class. I like him to remain a Buckeye. Remember, his sister is a Buckeye, and I think that he remains a Buckeye. So that's Chris. How about the other gentleman very recently in that video with him? Let's listen to what he had to say in that video.
I felt like it was going to be just me and Chris, we teammates right here, so it would only feel right to be teammates in the next level, working together and stuff. I want to be leaving here known as like a humble person.
That's KDW, Caden Dixon-Wyatt, the California kid who we talked about was being pursued by USC. And basically the story went, they got a couple of other guys. It's modern day, right? They got a ton of D1 prospects. Two of his teammates, Mark Bowman, that's the $6 million tight end that USC signed. And they've also got a 5-star offensive tackle at modern day who's going to USC. They were trying to talk to KDW and convince him to come to USC. And Lincoln Riley got on the phone with him, basically was like, hey, we'd love you to be a part of the class, but we're basically out of NIL money. But you're invited. And that's kind of where it supposedly died last week. Well, I guess they've found some money, and things have picked up hot and heavy with KDW and USC to the point where it looks like right now he's probably going to end up at USC. Dynamic playmaker, and he's going to be a total dude. If he goes to USC, they've also got a big wide receiver class, like 5 wide receivers in their class already. But I think KDW is immediately the number 2 guy in that class. Boobie Feaster, number 1. Boobie Feaster was, the number 1 wide receiver in the next class, but he reclassified. Super talented dude, and that's 2 super talented guys headlining that wide receiver class at USC. If he ends up there, which it looks like at this point, he just might. And I hate it, but whatever. It's a California kid. They're always tough pulls. He was technically the breaking of the modern day curse in my mind. Chris Henry Jr., while technically, goes to school at modern day and committed to Ohio State. He committed to Ohio State while he was still at Winthrop, while he was still in Ohio. So then he transferred out there, and if he stays with it, I don't know if you can officially count that as breaking the modern day curse. I think you've got to be a guy who's from out there. So I don't think it's broken yet. If KDW goes to SC, which again, looks like he's going to, and that sucks, man. That sucks because you're looking at a wide receiver room with obviously JJ and Brandon Inniss, and it looks like Quincy Porter to me is probably the next man up. If that's like, it's probably your starting 3 next year. And all of a sudden, man, you get really, really questionable really, really quick with Bryson Rogers, Mylan Graham. Obviously, Phillip Bell had a really good freshman year behind the scenes, but he didn't do anything on the field. Des Jones has been injured twice this year, I think. You got Toe Witten, BP Miller. Like, these freshmen have an opportunity. They got a real opportunity, especially the polished ones. Let's move on, because those two aren't the only ones with buzz surrounding them. Is Jaquaden Guilford, the number one player out of Indiana, was a kid who postponed his decision. He had a signing day, he had a decision day ready, and it was going to be Ohio State for the longest. And then it started going, looks like it's going to be Ole Miss. And it was definitely going to be Ole Miss right up until the day before, when he canceled it. And he canceled it and postponed it. Brian Hartline talked him into doing that. And in the time that he canceled it and postponed it to the time he eventually did announce, he was Buckeye. Now, the other option was Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. He liked the offense. They utilized their receivers well, and they were going to give him a lot of money. So he was all set to go to Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. Well, now Lane Kiffin is at LSU. And what do they want him to do at LSU? Immediately, they want him to pull some splashy, flashy flips, right? They want him to retain the class because they still have the 12th ranked class. They were able to keep, enough guys in that class to remain the 12th ranked class in the country. Here's some extra funds. Go make some stuff happen that's going to make our fan base really excited. Well, what's a way to do that? Well, you go after a guy that's committed to Brian Hartline. That certainly is going to make them happy. And the number one player in Indiana, Guilford's the real deal, man. I think this kid's going to be a stud in college. And here comes Lane. Well, now Guilford isn't talking about Ohio State or Ole Miss. He's talking about Ohio State and the other wide receiver, LSU. For more money, playing for Lane Kiffin, whose offense he wants to play in. Ultimately, what's the word on this one? I think he remains with the Ohio State class. I think Guilford remains. I think Caden Dixon-Wyatt, gone. Guilford in, Chris Henry Jr. in. That's the feeling I got as of today. But there is a fourth. There's five, but the fifth one's rock solid. There is a fourth where we've got to discuss. Jaden Ricketts was the first one of these guys to commit to the Ohio State class after getting his offer in a camp at Ohio State. The local kid out of Pataskala, fast kid, track kid, 10.8, 100-meter kid who plays in an offense that is not good for developing a wide receiver. And because of that, we don't have a ton of wide receiver film on him, but clearly a really good looking athlete, a driven athlete. When he was asked, we asked him at Buckeye Huddle after one of his games this year about the 5 wide receiver room. He wasn't scared of any of it. I mean, it's a confident guy, confident in himself. And he had not taken a single other visit, not a single visit until last weekend. Last weekend, he went and took an official visit to West Virginia. To West Virginia. What is it with these guys, man? So he goes and visits West Virginia for the very first time, first visit ever to anywhere else. And he does it the week before signing day. That's not good optics, man. That's not good optics. And obviously Ohio State, they don't have a hard, fast rule about this, like visiting somewhere else when you're committed. But if you are a top prospect, they'll put up with it. If you are a guy who some people didn't even think really could cut it in this class, sometimes that's not going to go well for you if you plan on sticking with Ohio State. However, based on what's going on this week at that position, I think everything will be just cool for him. Does he end up in the Buckeye class? I think he does. So Ricketts in, KDW out, Guilford in, Chris Henry Jr. in is the feeling I got as I'm recording this right now. And of course, we know who's rock solid. That is the 2026 JUCK'I Isaiah West award-winning most underrated prospect of the cycle. That's an award we started last year. It was the inaugural year because it was my first year doing this show. And the initial winner was, of course, the guy that the award is named after, Isaiah West. And I would say we officially hit on that one. Wouldn't you guys agree? that we hit on the fact that Isaiah West was the most underrated prospect we had seen the whole cycle. I think we've hit on that. We're talking about a guy who's out there as a true freshman doing the damn thing at Ohio State. So officially, Isaiah West is a cha-ching hit. Brock Boyd will be the next one. Brock Boyd. Brock Boyd thinks he's the top wide receiver in the state of Texas, one of the top in the country, and I agree. Not only is he locked in, but I think he'll be one of the first of these guys to hit the field at Ohio State, and I really love this kid. But outside of these wide receivers, I don't see any overt potential risks of anybody else flipping right now. But let's move over to the other side of things and talk about a safety. For one, let's go over the safety room. Let's go over the safeties in the room right now next year. Malik Hartford, Jalen McClain, Fahim Delane, Leroy Roker, Deshaun Stewart, Cody Haddad, incoming, Blaine Bradford, Kamari Bing, Simeon Caldwell. That's 9, and that's a full room. I wouldn't be surprised if we see at least one of them hit the transfer. I'm not going to put a name on that because for some reason people get all angry about it like it's a shot at someone's manhood. I don't see it that way. I understand some people do, and maybe that's why they get mad because they see it that way. I see it as someone who is looking for the best opportunity for themselves, and they have a very short window to make the right and best decisions to succeed. It's a short window. If you make the wrong one, you blow up your shot. If you make the right one, you can get yourself in the best opportunity to potentially make a career or at least a couple years making money playing football. And that's the way I look at it. Now, here's what we do know. Over 30 guys over the last 2 years have transferred out. And it's just going to happen. Some of these guys we're talking about are going to be gone, and that's what happens. I think that not losing anybody in last spring portal maybe skewed people to this fact. Like we're going to lose 10, 15 guys every year. That's going to happen. Now, the Buckeyes don't seem content with that 9 in the safety room because they are currently after another safety, attempting to flip another safety. And if you're someone who's watched this show, my recruiting coverage for a while, you know that I really love this kid, teammate of CJ Sana, and an absolute delight to watch, and that is Caden Gephardt. Caden Gephardt was being pursued heavily by Clemson and Penn State when Ohio State kind of loosely got in on his recruitment. They weren't coming after him very hard, and he committed to Clemson because they were a little bit late and they were just way behind on the relationship building. Well, the Buckeyes already got one former Clemson commit this class in Drake Quinn, who committed to Clemson before he decommitted and then eventually chose Ohio State. Can they flip Caden Gephardt, another safety? They're after it. They're after it hard. Gephardt from Olentangy, a safety who is an absolute tackling machine. 6'2", 200. This kid has 400 tackles in his high school career. 400. As a junior and a senior, he was the defensive player of the year in his conference. Literally 106 tackles and 8 picks, 8 career picks, 100 tackles like every single year. 100 tackles, a couple picks every single year since the time he was a freshman. He is an absolute regulator. Matter of fact, interestingly enough, that's what the Ohio State linebackers call themselves, the regulators. He might end up a linebacker, but he's got safety speed. He's got safety skills. Doesn't have the best coverage skills. But when we look at these guys in the room, you got your regulators, your blasters, your thumpers. That would be, to me, Fahim Delane, Blaine Bradford, Malik Hartford. That's Caden Gephardt. That's his style. He's in that mold. Watching him and CJ Sana, CJ at linebacker and Gephardt at safety, watching those two together, it is probably the most fun you can have watching any high school defense in the state of Ohio last year. They're just so much fun. You just got 2 Ohio State prospects, right? Ohio State level prospects on one defense who's, one is in this level, one is in this level. And it's just, they're 2 just absolute assassins, and it's so much fun. I love it. So we've watched a lot of their film. I'll put some over here when I'm talking about Gephardt, because this dude is just he's an absolute machine. In fact, I forget who it was. Somebody messaged me not long ago and was like, "Hey, Juck, I went to Olentangy and watched CJ Sana. Gosh, man, Gephardt stole the show." And I was just like, damn, I know, dude. He's so good. However, the rankings don't see him that way. 3-star, 450 or 550 in the country, depending on where you look. In addition to Clemson, he had offers from Penn State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Tennessee after him as well. Now, where does he end up? I think he ends up with his teammate, CJ Sana, in the Buckeyes class. I think the Buckeyes do get Caden Gephardt. And there's another guy on the board that, of course, we've been trying to get. That's CJ Bronaugh. And CJ Bronaugh, a Florida commit, who, the longer this was going to take, the more it was apparent he was waiting to see who the Gators hired, because he would prefer to stay home. Well, the Gators made their hire. They made their hire, John Sumrall, a defensive dude, a guy who I think is going to be a tremendous recruiter. And just based on the hire, I'm not basing this off of anything else, but the time, my feel on it, and the hire, I think this is cooked. I don't think the Buckeyes end up getting Bronaugh because of that. Now, that is my feel on everything that's going on up until now. Of course, tomorrow we will definitely come on and talk about the class as some of these commits are rolling on. We'll probably do a live show, and then we'll cover some more on Buckeye Huddle Primetime at 8 p.m. While I'm doing this recruiting video, I just want to, talk about maybe a little philosophical stuff regarding this class, because things have changed. And I got this comment in the comments from this guy, but I think it represents a comment I've heard often recently as we've come down the stretch here in this class. And I want to address it because I keep seeing it more and more. And I don't think it's fair. I'm an unabashed fan of Ohio State, and you guys all know that. That's clear. I don't hide that. When I cover the team and when I cover recruiting, I do it as objectively as I can. And sometimes that includes criticism. And some of you guys hate that. And I understand that. But I'm always going to tell you how I honestly feel, because, that's why I do this, or why we all just want to be honest and be able to vent and things. And sometimes I do that too. And I feel like if I was never critical or told you that I thought every Ohio State player or every recruit was great, then it would have no impact when I told you, no, I really think this guy is great, because I say everybody's great, right? And sometimes I'm critical about players, and sometimes people get mad at me about that, and I get it. It's not easy to go out on an island and say something that I know is going to irritate people, but I didn't walk into this gig with any credibility at all, right? Nobody knew me. I don't have any credibility. The only credibility I have is what I earn from each individual audience member. And if I say something because I see an irregularity and I believe I'm right about it, I have to say it, because then when it happens, you're going to say, wow, nobody else said that, but he said that and he was right. And that's how I build my credibility, right? So even if I don't want to say it and don't like it, I've got to say it. And I've been out on an island several times throughout the course of this show, whether it's a popular opinion or an unpopular opinion on a particular player. And be it negative or positive, my track record is pretty doggone good. Recently, there has been a couple of people calling me out, though. They're saying that I'm essentially blowing smoke up everybody's butt about this recruiting class to make people and or myself feel better about this class. And that bothers me. It bothers me because there's a lot of people that cover college football who cover a team specifically, and they do put a positive spin on everything, and everything doesn't deserve a positive spin. Sometimes it's just, no, that just sucked. And I don't know, maybe they get addicted to the feedback that they get, people telling them they're so smart because they said something nice and that makes people feel good. Or maybe it's something more sinister. I don't know. I don't play that game. But I can tell you this, it's been a real mission of mine to never let my homer affect my honest analysis. I'm a homer. I still try to be honest. That's what it is. And when it comes to this recruiting class, my analysis of this class at the end of the summer, when Ohio State was sitting with the 9th ranked class, was two things. Number one, I am not happy with this being the 9th ranked class. I think it's a huge disappointment if they finish with the 9th ranked class. However, I personally really like the players that they have selected to invest in at the top of the class. And I really like a lot of the evaluations that they did at the low end of the class. And if you do that better than your competition, then your class doesn't finish 9th when it plays out on the field. That was my stance on the class back then, before they went on the run that we've seen the last 45 days. So here's what this guy has to say. And I'm only reading this because this is a sentiment that is out there, and I just want to rebut it because I think it's wrong. He says, Juck, I don't want to hear about this awful recruiting cycle. Coming off a national championship and failing so miserably in the recruiting rankings is disgusting and disappointing. Texas has 4 or 5 5-stars. Oregon has 3 5-stars. Tennessee has 3 5-stars. Please remind everyone, we won the national championship because we had the best players in their recruiting class. Trey was the number 1 back. Jack and JT were 5-stars. What did those players do in the playoffs? Sonny was a 5-star. Like, come on, the list goes on and on. You win the national championship by having the best high school players. Correction. You win the national championship by having the best college football players. Resuming. Watching these painful videos, talking about my videos, watching these painful videos, getting all excited about a 3-star flip to Ohio State is pathetic. That really hurt my feelings. It really hurt my feelings, pal. What are we, BYU, he says? That hurt my feelings too. Why are we getting so excited over these players? Your standards have really fallen down the drain just because you want to feel some sort of optimism about this recruiting class. Instead, you should be calling it like it is. The reality is we dropped the ball, missed out on a massive opportunity to capitalize winning a national championship in this year's recruiting class, and having the least amount of 5-stars in this class will absolutely come back to haunt Ohio State down the road, and it makes me sick. Be ready for some heartbreaking losses in the future. Be ready to watch some amazing players playing for other teams smoke us in the future playoffs because we suffered a bad recruiting class. Now, number 1, a bad recruiting class is not going to sink an operation for one. But number 2, I've had a lot of these comments, though I don't think anybody put all of it in one comment so succinct as this guy did. And I know there's a lot of you that feel this way. And to those of you who feel this way, not just about my coverage or, but basically about each of those comments that he said there, like, you're not going to find somebody, number 1, who believes as much in high school recruiting being the backbone of a winning program than me. Like, we're in total agreement with that. The class of 2021, they won the national championship, had 7 5-stars. It was an unbelievable class. The kind of class that'll never happen again, just so we're clear. And I don't mean at Ohio State, I mean anywhere. He's absolutely right with that. You win the national championship by bringing in the best talent and developing the best talent. We all know that. But when he says watching these painful videos about getting excited about a 3-star flip, let's add a little context, because what he's talking about is my excited video about Darius McKinley, a 3-star defensive lineman. Who is what? Who is he? Well, he's Ohio State's 2nd 3-tech. He's their number 2 3-tech in the class. So it's a little different if I'm getting excited about this guy if he's the main guy. He's not. Damari Simeon is the main 3-tech. This is the 2nd guy. Now, I am excited about this guy who's not even expected to be an eventual starter. This is a number 2 guy at the position. And I think that this particular prospect that he's talking about, Darius McKinley, is a very high-end value play for a number 2 guy, the type of guy who could be an eventual starter, but is not expected to and didn't cost that kind of money to. That's a value play. That is a value play, and those are big gets, because the more shots you take, the more you're going to hit. And that's a shot you took for free, and a kid with really good pedigree who just might end up being developed into a starter. And I guess that's the difference between he and I. He can't see all that. He can't see. Maybe I got to spell that out. I'll spell it out in the next video so you don't get disgusted by it. Now, I don't know where he's getting his 5-star count, but I just want to be clear here. And I've said this as long as I've been doing this show. I don't judge elite by 5-star. The number 25 ranked player in a class is a 5-star. You know what the number 33 ranked player in the class is? Well, he's a 4-star. Do you know the difference between those players? Absolutely nothing. How I judge players, there are usually 5 to 10 prospects who are absolute can't miss kids. And you get a couple of those guys like, damn, can't miss her. Awesome. And after that, it's top 100 players to me. That's how I judge it. You get a top 5 animal, can't miss guy. Well, in my mind, you just got a dude, a guy who's worth a couple of guys. Then it's top 100. And after that, it's top 300. Now, I don't know where you're looking at for your rankings, but just to make you feel better, Chris Henry Jr. is a 5-star by multiple services. Kari Wilder is a 5-star, the number 1 defensive lineman in the country at Rivals. Jay Timmons is a 5-star, the number 1 cornerback at Rivals. And in addition to that, you're completely ignoring that the Ohio State football staff has gone through, when it comes to the turmoil throughout this class, a huge shift in how they are allowed to spend money when a lot of people did not. A lot of people totally ignored the shift that they've had to deal with the new house settlement. And they lost a lot of high-profile battles to schools that are overpaying. Those prospects, Carter Meadows, Luke Waffle, and I'm here to tell you right now, they lost those prospects because the schools that got them paid ridiculous money that they weren't going to pay. And what did they do? History will show that they went out scouted them, and got Kari Wilder, who will outperform both Luke Waffle and Carter Meadows as a college football. I guarantee it. And they got it for way less money. He was ranked just inside the top 300. And he'll be a better college football player than both Luke Waffles and Carter Meadows. No doubt in my mind. And Ohio State didn't spend anywhere near the money. And point blank, he'll straight up be better. Carter Meadows is one of these NFL first-round type cats that they draft off of traits. He's got sensational traits, 0 production in high school. Luke Waffle, Kari Wilder, similar production machines. Both of them, both incredibly strong, great athletes. You could flip a coin. My personal preference is Kari. And I've been saying that since he was a top 300 guy. Now he's a number 1 guy. But we'll see what happens with that. But they've been handcuffed, and the way they've gotten around it has been really excellent. As far as getting excited about 3-stars, we are living in a different era now where you just simply can't stack 4 stars. You can't stack 4 stars. Everybody's got a budget. And truth be told, oftentimes, particularly in this new era, there are guys where you know they have potential and you know they're not going to be ready in a couple of years. And that's appealing to you because you want that guy sticking around and developing and having him in your back pocket for a couple of years later. A guy who will stick around. There's both strategy and circumstances going on here, and they're not just unique to Ohio State. If we're talking about 3-star prospects, get this. This looks considerably different than it used to. This has changed a ton. So when you see all these new Ohio State 3-stars, I want to show you something. So the other top programs in the country, just talking about 3-stars here. Ohio State has 8. Alabama has 9. Georgia has 8. The number 1 class, USC, has 13. Texas has 9. Tennessee has 9. Miami has 9. Michigan has 11. Now, those are classes in the top 10, except for Michigan. I was just teasing them. Let's go back to 2021. 2021, not a long time ago. Ready for this? Here's the top 10. Here's how many 3-stars they had. Alabama had 2. Ohio State had 2. LSU had 5. Georgia had 4. Clemson had 1. Oregon had 4. USC had 5. Oklahoma had 3. Do you see the drastic difference here? 3-stars have tripled in classes in the top 10 now. Tripled. So when you see all these 3-stars, keep in mind, everybody in that top 10 is dealing with the same deal. Things have changed. Those mid-range 4-star guy like Jacob Weatherspoon, the perfect example. Jacob Weatherspoon, a 4-star kid, Committed to Ohio State? No, he ends up going to North Carolina. It's that caliber of guy that has really spread out around the country. That caliber of guy. And just a few weeks ago, Ohio State had more 3-stars until they did the rankings update. And what happened then? Well, Kamari Bing, he was a 3-star last month. Now he's a top 200 guy. Braxton Rembert, 3-star last month. Now he's a top 200 guy. Showing already that their evaluations are spot on. And you also got guys like Brock Boyd. Brock Boyd is a 3-star. That's a blue chip prospect all day. I don't care what anybody says. Now, you can just pass on 3-star guys. But I mean, like, there's other guys who you're bringing in not just because of their ranking or their skill, but because their body type fits something you absolutely want. Like Jameer Perez, for instance, that's a 3-star. I think he's a 3-star kid. I think he's a 3-star talent, but his size at 340, 6'4", in-state, a 1-tech, allows you to do something that you otherwise couldn't do. And I think that's something you absolutely have to have. So you bring him in. Mason Wilhelm, that's a legacy lineman at 6 foot 290. If you've got room, why wouldn't you put him in the system and see what happens? Why wouldn't you? And in an off year for quarterbacks, which keep in mind now, there's going to be one every other year for every program now. Nobody's stacking 5-star quarterback after 5-star quarterback. They're just going to transfer out and you're wasting your money. So you're going every other year. This is the off year. This year they get 3-star Luke Fahey. 3-star Luke Fahey to put between Tavian St. Clair and Brady Edmonds. I think he's a damn good one who could potentially beat out somebody for a starting job, but that's not the plan. So I understand, well, if you're just looking through this list, you might think this is a disappointment, but you need to look at what's going on everywhere else to fully understand the picture here. The competition also tells the full story. And whatever it is, quit looking at 5 stars, okay? The most overblown thing. But if you must, go do a little more research, check out who Jay Timmons is, who Kari Wilder is, who Chris Henry Jr. is. Also remember this, Blaine Bradford was a 5-star halfway through his senior season, and now he's not. Why? Couldn't tell you, but he was. So, I mean, really, that was 4 you had right there. Sam Greer, here you go. Sam Greer is the number 33 ranked player. That's a 4-star. That's a 4-star. 32 is a 5-star. Sam Greer is 1 spot away, man. 1 spot away. So that's why just saying 5 stars is a little bit short-sighted. Anyway, I appreciate you guys. I'd love to know how you guys feel about the class. But before I leave, I would love to know how you guys feel about the 2025 freshman class. Now, you guys love the 2025 freshman class, don't you? Can I tell you something real quick? The 2025 class, which we all love, had 6 top 100 players. The 2026 class has 6 top 100 players. How about top 200? The 2025 class had 9 top 200 players. The 2026 class, 13 top 200 players. How about top 300? The 2025 class, 13 top 300 players. The 2026 class, 17 top 300 players. I'm going to put out some nice graphics for you. We're going to break it down by position. But on paper, the 26 class is better than the 25 class that we all love so much. Now, with that, I will see you guys tomorrow. Juck 'em Bucks out.